Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:06 now on a very fast-paced O'Connor and Company. I guess they all are. Thank you to Andrew Langer for filling in for me yesterday as I had a scheduled medical day out, and I appreciate him in the middle of an incredibly busy news cycle jumping in here. But let's face it, you did all the work, Julie Gunlock. I appreciate that, too.
Not at
Thanks
all.
for,
it was fun, but we missed you.
Coming up at 8:05, Virginia Fox, Congresswoman out of North Carolina, and at 8:35, Representative Bob Good of Virginia, who'll give us the latest on the speaker race. That's all coming up. Meanwhile, we turn our sights back to the Middle East. Yesterday, President Joe Biden said a lot of things. Not much of it was coherent and certainly wasn't clear. But if you sort of divide out from this soundbite here, you'll hear something that he said to the Iranians after their support and celebration of Hamas. Listen.
And made it clear to the Iranians, be careful.
Wow.
Be careful. Well, that says it all. Victoria Coates was the Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump and now is Vice President of Heritage Foundation's Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy. I don't know, Ms. Coates, it seems to me that you need a commander-in-chief and leader of the free world who can make some pretty clear statements, and that, what does that even mean? Do we know what that means? And isn't it a little too late at this point after giving them $6 billion?
One would think. I mean, good morning, Larry, and good morning, Julie. I mean, I just thought this statement was so bizarre.
Yeah.
A, how was he talking to them? What was the means of communication here? And then B, be careful. Does that mean that what they've done so far is somehow acceptable?
Right.
Is it within the bounds?
You're right up to the line there now. You're on thin ice.
Yeah.
One more step.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I know it's mindless. And apparently he also said, "Oh, you know, I've seen the pictures of the beheaded babies, and then the White House had to walk that back. He hasn't seen any of the pictures." So this is really the problem here. And I mean, I take it back to Afghanistan. That was the beginning of all of this in 2021 when they had that botched pullout, and he insisted it was wonderful. Then we had Ukraine. Now we have Israel. What's next year?
You know, Ms. Coates, it is really frustrating also because you never know if his words are intentional. He is constantly making mistakes, telling fictitious stories about his own life and his own situation. So you really never know what when he says this, be careful. Like, who knows if that actually happened? And that's part of the signals from the United States that we're in a weakened state. How does this convey to the rest of the world?
Well, I mean, it conveys just as we saw manifested over the weekend. And, you mentioned the $6 billion, and nobody likes that. That's obviously a huge mistake. But I keep thinking that didn't fuel this attack. That's going to fuel the next attack. Mm-hmm. And what's fueled this attack was the 2.5 years of not enforcing sanctions on the Iranians. So they've been banking tens of billions of dollars. And we've had reporting in the papers, in the Wall Street Journal, that they said, yes, we have funneled all this money we got to Hamas and Hezbollah because we see this as our opportunity to attack Israel. And, so we knew this was happening. And the administration was hell-bent on getting to a new Iran deal. So they just let it happen. And, this is what occurs when you have a vacuum of American leadership. And I mean, heaven only knows what would happen if Joe Biden were reelected next year and we had another 4 years of this.
I'm sure you saw this, Ms. Coates, as a veteran of the Trump administration, whose position on Iran was unequivocal and obvious and pretty comprehensive. And of course, when Biden became president, he reversed everything. But yesterday, or I believe it was the day before yesterday, the spokesperson for the Blinken State Department actually tried to blame Trump policies for the $6 billion that was released to Iran. They say that those were assets that were frozen from oil transactions, frozen assets that the Trump administration froze. Biden merely unfroze them, but if it weren't for Trump, they would have never been frozen in the first place, I guess is their argument. Could you, as someone who worked in that administration, could you please respond to this embarrassing finger pointing that it's Trump's fault that Iran is now $6 billion richer?
Well, according to these people, it's Trump's fault that, the sun comes up in the morning. It's, this is just their default case. And, it's a ridiculous kind of math game that they're playing. Of course, we froze tons of assets. We put on the strongest sanctions program in history. And the whole point of that was to starve Iran of resources so that they would knock it off with the terrorist attacks. President Trump is a deal maker. He would have been willing to try to get to a good deal. As a matter of fact, he didn't get out of the Iran deal for over a year because he kept saying, is it possible to make it better? And finally, we came back and said, no, the Europeans are feckless. They're not helping us. They're not serious. We can't get to a better deal. And he said, okay, lower the boom then. If they won't be reasonable, I'm not gonna string this along. So sure. Yes, we tried to starve them of every asset we could. And there was actually a really encouraging piece in the New York Times of all places in about 2019 timeframe when you had Hezbollah lamenting that the golden days were gone and they will never come again. Well, unfortunately, they did come again for Hezbollah and Hamas under the Biden administration. But, we're certainly never going to apologize for freezing Iranian assets, given what's happened.
Secretary Blinken is heading to Israel to pressure them to de-escalate and probably ask for a ceasefire or some sort of press for one. And there's also been talk of the Biden administration pressuring Turkey to intervene. China is a big part of this. China is, buying a lot of Iranian oil. I know that this is the Iranian ties here, but why isn't Blinken going to China to talk about their role in supporting Iran, who then supports Hamas?
Well, actually, Blinken went to China over the summer, and in a string of senior administration officials, including the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of the Treasury, which achieved absolutely nothing. It was just an embarrassment across the board. So I don't necessarily want him traveling, but I do agree with you, Julie. Xi has bankrolled this.
Yeah.
And as Biden stopped enforcing the sanctions, they're now selling over 1 million barrels of oil a day to China. That's where all the money's coming from. And the dirtier little secret here is we could be producing that energy here at home. When we took the Iranian exports as close to zero as possible, we actually, as the Trump administration, worked with Saudi Arabia to make sure we were doing everything we could domestically. It's a different system. They have a cartel. We have a free system. But we could relax regulations. We could create a more encouraging business environment, which we did. And we supplied China with all of the illicit energy they needed. There was plenty of energy on the market for them, and they thanked us. They were like, oh, well, thank you. We need energy. You provided it. They still cheated, but it was de minimis compared to what they're getting now.
Victoria Coates is our guest. And quickly, Victoria, as, again, a veteran Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump, events on the ground right now as Egypt announced yesterday that they would not open their border to citizens of Gaza who want to flee from the military interventions that are going on there. What kind of pressure could or should the Biden administration put on Egypt? Egypt is supposed to be cooperating here. Egypt is supposed to be an ally. Why don't they open their border? And if civilians want to leave the area, they should be allowed to.
Well, they should be, but the problem is it's very hard to tell who's a civilian at this point in Gaza. And, if you look at the number of people who participated in this attack and the savage ferocity of it, is Egypt thinking twice about their commitment to the Palestinian cause? And are they thinking, wow, we're not quite sure we want these people, how do you vet them? And
that's pretty ironic, isn't it?
It's extremely ironic. But that if there's ever a reason to be hopeful about this, and I've been around it too long to have a great deal of hope, but if the Arab world is starting to wake up to the fact that that this is not the religion we practice, This is this is beyond the pale, and starting to worry that the situation is spinning out of control. You might be able to make some progress there, but make no mistake about it, the brunt of the suffering going forward is going to be on the Palestinians in Gaza. But they were the ones who wanted Hamas to lead them. So, I don't know what to do about that.
It's so nice to hear a national security expert who doesn't have a broken moral compass and can actually speak plainly. Victoria Coates, thank you for joining us. Heritage Foundation is good to have you. It is You bet. It's 7:17. We're a little late here because, well, sort of an important story. Let's get straight to Jamie Whitten, also with an important story. What's going on at the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center?
On the next Vince Coglianese show, the latest on the speaker fight, and are some Democrats finally ready to call out their party's bigotry? Join us 3 to 6 here on WMAL.
Julie Gundlach, one of the most dangerous places to work in Washington, D.C. is in the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, because at any given moment, up until just a few days ago, you could be met with a fangs-bared, rampaging monster. And no, I'm not talking about Hunter Biden on another spree. No. Of course, I'm referring to Commander, the White House dog, who replaced Major, the White House dog. Both of them had the same inclination to bite randomly, either Secret Service agents or, in the case of Commander recently, the gardener, the 70-plus-year-old White House landscaper, was also attacked viciously by this dog. Not the dog's fault, of course. It's Biden's fault. But we openly said, where's OSHA here? Where's work? Well, and of course, the answer is, see, when you're the White House, you waive all those nasty little regulations that the rest of us peons have to deal with, right? OSHA doesn't walk into the White House and say this is a violation like they do to any sort of small business and mom and pop organization. But there is congressional oversight, and Congresswoman Virginia Fox. You wonder what the Fox says? Well, the Fox says the White House needs to clean up its act, and she is now targeting them for a workplace safety inquiry and has let the Secretary of Labor know that they need to answer some questions as to how they let this continue, knowing after, 12 incidents that employees at the White House, the staff, they were in danger, in very real risk of being attacked maliciously by this dog.
It's terrible. It is really terrible. And, honestly, I know I keep saying this, but I do feel so bad for Commander. I feel bad for that dog who needs to be given away to an owner who cares for him. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's been in the news constantly. It's a complete embarrassment. And instead of giving Commander away to a trainer who can help this dog, they just keep allowing this to happen. Commander's in crisis. Commander is calling out for attention here. Seriously.
Virginia Fox, the Congresswoman who is beginning this process now to hold the White House accountable for putting employees in danger, she will be joining us at 8:05. We'll probably also ask her about some other issues as well. Meanwhile, in other critter news,
oh my gosh,
this is according to the LA Times. Researchers say that Los Angeles's birds are segregated. They did a new study. They argued that the difference in bird populations is a lasting consequence of racist home lending practices from decades ago, as well as modern wealth disparities.
Okay. I don't know. Does this beat the Washington Post a couple years ago that had the story, The Racist Legacy Many Birds Carry? I'm not kidding. I'm not making that. I'm reading it. It is an actual Washington Post, and it talked about the birding community faces a difficult debate about the names of species connected to enslavers, supremacists, and grave robbers. The LA Times was like, I can do better. Hold my beer.
Let me just say, because I think I've mentioned this before, my wife, Meredith, love her to death. She's an amazing woman. She hates birds. God, she hates birds. Everyone said, "Oh, listen to the morning song of these birds chirping as the sun goes up." She wants to get a shotgun. She wants to get a shotgun. So if we ever moved to L.A. and she learned that the bird population is sparse in black communities, we are moving to the hood. Meredith is like, that's it. I'm going to South Central with my homies because if there's no birds, that's where I'm setting up.
That is the most peculiar little quirk.
Oh, she hates birds.
So
she
funny.
Absolutely hates birds. They're evil. Absolutely satanic beasts. All right. Meanwhile, speaking of satanic beasts, there's been a Bigfoot sighting
Yes.
Yeah, a couple was on a train in Colorado, and looking out the window, they saw a Sasquatch clogging through the bush. As soon as the Sasquatch is sort of seen on camera, it squats down and sort of the camouflage is remarkable. It looks like it's a bush.
Sure.
It's really well done. So my understanding is this is Sasquatch, and you should look at the video. It's Bigfoot. There's no doubt about it. It's Bigfoot. Although I'm told that Senator John Fetterman did go hiking in Colorado recently, and so this could be very well. He forgot to put his clothes on, and he's just,
You know what people do in
letting it all hang
Colorado?
out.
You know what else people do in Colorado? They smoke a lot of weed.
They do smoke a lot of weed. And apparently they don't groom
Yeah.
themselves.
yeah.
It's definitely a hairy beast of some sort.
Yeah.
And it's, well, you judge for yourself. Bigfoot or John Fetterman. You be the judge. It's 7:23.
Now on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
I just want all Dodgers fans to know that they're in our thoughts and prayers here. It's got to be heartbreaking, Julie Gunlock, when you're a baseball fan. You're rooting for the LA Dodgers. You win 100 games. You've got the fourth biggest payroll in all baseball. You think you're going to roll right into the World Series, and then you get swept. How humiliating.
Yeah,
Swept.
I'll just say, one small correction. They're not in my thoughts and prayers.
No?
No.
Oh, well, they did that very nice tribute to the nuns.
To the Catholic Church. That's right.
Right? The Sisters of Perpetual. Oh, no, wait a second. That was an anti-Catholic,
Those
anti-Christian.
were pornographers. Right.
Yeah.
Making fun of the
pro-porn,
Catholic Church. Yes.
Pro-kids transition sex. Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, I guess the Dodgers got exactly what they deserved.
Yeah. Messed with the wrong guy there, Dodgers.
We'll all say a rosary for you. You might want to rethink who you honor next time. Karma. Beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing.
Coming up at 8:05, Virginia Fox, Congresswoman from North Carolina. And at 8:35, Bob Good, Congressman out of Virginia. Talk about the speaker fight and all that jazz. You got to feel really bad for these poor young children at Harvard.
I love this story.
So there's 31 student groups that put out statements supporting the terrorists, right? Saying that they stand with Palestine, free Palestine, and the occupation. I want to reiterate, because you got to repeat it over and over again so that everybody understands. If anyone out there is trying to wrap themselves in the cloak of, oh, I'm just against occupation, Gaza has not been occupied for
since 2005.
Close to 20 years. When they say end the occupation, they mean eradicate Israel.
That's right.
They consider now these Harvard students may be stupid. And that's what they're claiming now. They're claiming they're stupid, which I love.
Right.
Oh, we're not Nazis. We're stupid.
Right.
So you may be stupid, but just so you know, and that's why we're educating you, when people say end the occupation, they mean end the state of Israel. They believe that the entire state of Israel, recognized in 1948, and the political borders that they have had since then, enduring multiple wars on all sides from all their neighbors and enemies, they believe that Israel itself is occupation.
Yes. And
so
that when you hear colonialization, when you hear right of return, when you hear, end the occupation, remember how the left used those dog whistles? That is a dog whistle for kill the Jews.
Kill the Jews. So that's what all of these 31 Harvard organizations did. So one of my colleagues over at Town Hall, John Hassan, I believe it was.
This is great.
Wrote an article actually listing the names of the people who belong to those organizations. Because, see, they're all hiding behind the cloak of anonymity.
Well, now they are. They actually sort of took those names off the letter and just reverted to the organization. But he has the names.
He has the manifests of not just the leaders of the organization, but the people who belong to the organization.
The stupid people.
And so now there are CEOs out there who have taken to social media saying, I'm not going to hire anybody who belongs to these organizations.
Right.
If you went to Harvard, I'm going to find out what organizations you belong to. And if you're in these organizations, I'm going to hire you. And now there's pushback here.
Right.
Apparently, the CEOs who claim that they don't want to hire people who are in league with Nazis, they're now the bad guys. It's like, oh, come on. They just made one youthful error.
Right.
These are 20-something-year-old Ivy League college students.
Right. And law students.
Law
and
students.
grad students.
Oh, well, I signed that thing, but I didn't know what was in it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who I want to hire as a lawyer.
Right. And let's remember also, these are the same group of people who are like, okay, these are just kids. These are just kids. They didn't know what they're doing. I mean, they make bad decisions all the time, but they can cut their penises off and shed their breasts. Okay. Right. That's perfectly fine. But no, they sign a letter like this and they're suddenly infants.
Listen, there are such things as youthful mistakes. I know of people personally very well who, when they were teenagers in high school, said stupid stuff when social media first was born.
Right.
Right? And they are now having that held against them.
Right.
Trust me. Listen, I hate cancel culture. All right? But let me just be clear. Cancel culture in its purest form is somebody making an off-color joke or remark that isn't meant to be taken seriously, and their life is destroyed because of it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
When you are an Ivy League college student and you belong to an organization that premeditatedly and with great purpose and forethought decides to take the side of the terrorists, and then you have to feel repercussions because you're in that organization, that's not cancel culture.
No.
That's actual, that's
good hiring practices.
Yeah, it's gravity doing what it does. If you drop a ball, it's going to hit the ground.
Yeah, this is also. Let's not forget. This is the biggest loss. This is the biggest massacre to Jews since the Holocaust. This is incredible what has happened, and the idea that Lawrence Summers, former head of Harvard, then goes on, because Bill Ackerman is the CEO, who said, I'm not sure I'm going to hire these folks. They have bad judgment. And then Lawrence Summers,
let's listen to what Lawrence Summers said.
Okay,
here,
good.
It's cut 12. Let's go ahead and hear the former president of Harvard.
Some who probably signed their groups on didn't fully know what they were signing. Some, I'm sure, were naive and stupid. I don't think this is a time for individual vilification. It's not a time for demonizing Israel, and it's not a time for demonizing students who weren't careful.
He's like, listen, I used to be the president of Harvard. Let me tell you something. These are pretty stupid kids, all right? They don't know what they're doing. They're naive. They're too busy getting stoned and skipping class. I mean, come on.
They're really dumb.
That's really the argument he's making.
Right. Essentially, forgive these stupid kids.
Right.
And look, this is the thing. Lawrence Summers is one of these guys who sat around and allowed people to say words are violence. What I want to know is, when is Harvard going to now provide armed guards and, special housing for the Jewish students who have to go to school with these people who want them eradicated, who want them killed?
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Good
because
question.
again, words are violence, and these students signed onto a letter that, according to the rules, are violent. So I think Harvard has to step up here and provide some protection for Jewish students.
Hate only goes in one direction.
That's right. I know. I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, in another college campus, we have a very different story, and I want to give kudos to the president of University of Florida, Ben Sasse. He's a former senator from Nebraska, who, to be honest, was very frustrating when he was in the U.S. Senate. He was sort of a bit of a virtue signaler now and again, and he didn't like Donald Trump. And he reached the point where he would oppose Donald Trump even on policies that I thought he was in favor of.
Yeah.
So that made it frustrating. He found his position in the Senate to be untenable. He didn't like it anymore, didn't want to run for re-election. He became a university president. And you remember the campus of University of Florida, they were protesting because...
Oh, yeah.
Well, sure. And this was the funny thing. Is like, I don't want to be a part of the Republican Party if it has Trump because, And so then he tries to go to college and they're like, oh, you're a Republican? You're a racist.
And he's like, but I'm one of the good ones.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't matter.
All right. So not to dance on that grave anymore, because he's actually done something pretty great. He put out a absolutely brilliant letter. I can't read all of it to you. It's too long. But there's no doubt where the University of Florida faculty and administration and leadership is with regard to Israel. He put it out perfectly, and I'll a little bit of it. I'll not tiptoe around the simple fact what Hamas did is evil, and there's no defense for terrorism. This shouldn't be hard. Sadly, too many people in the elite academia have been so weakened by their moral confusion that when they see videos of raped women, hear a beheaded baby, or learn of a grandmother murdered in her home, the first reaction of some is to provide context and to blame the raped women, beheaded baby, or the murdered grandmother. In other grotesque cases, they express simple support for the terrorists. Good for him. He says it's not just wrong, it's sickening and it's dehumanizing. So good for him, saying specific.
Yes.
He said, listen, in the coming days, it's possible that anti-Israeli protests will come to UF's campus. I've told our police chief and administration this university always has two foundational commitments. We protect our students and we protect speech. It's always been true. Constitution protects the rights of people to make abject idiots of themselves.
He said one other thing. He said it is beneath people called to educate our next generation of Americans. This is the problem. Our higher ed in the United States is filled with these monsters who do exactly that, who provide context or express simple support, as Ben Sasse said. Yep. They are filled with these people. People are surprised that this happens on university campuses because the faculty supports this.
That's right.
These kids are reflecting what they hear in their classrooms.
It's a terrific letter, and I want to be completely unequivocal about that. Ben Sasse deserves support and applause for this, and the sad thing and depressing thing is that this is the unicorn.
This is the rare moment
this
when a university president. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And it's clear, and it's so morally clear about right and wrong, good and evil. And what side they are on at the University of Florida and what side they should be on. But at the same time, and this is so critically important, he emphasized, listen, we have a constitution. You're going to see people who disagree with what I have to say in this letter, and they're going to have demonstrations on our campus. And they have the right to make abject idiots of themselves. That's how you do it. But you don't do what we're seeing in college campuses where, Riley Gaines can't show up and say, you know what, I think women are defined as biologically and chromosomally women and they shouldn't have to deal with it. Oh, no, they get barred from campus.
Oh, they get attacked. She was taken hostage.
And then physically attacked. Yeah. When Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh goes, or if I go and give remarks at a college campus, the protests actually lead the administration to cancel the speech.
Because it's actual violence.
Now, listen, I have no problem. If I'm invited to speak on a college campus and the president of the university writes a letter like this that says, listen, we have the right to free speech here. The Constitution protects Larry O'Connor from making an idiot of himself. I will actually, I'm on board with that. I probably will make an idiot of myself. That's what we do. In fact, I get paid to do it. I'm happy. Makes me happy. Ridiculous. Good job, Ben Sasse. Now, what about the rest of the college presidents out there?
Yeah, let's
Honestly,
go.
he's raised the bar. It's time for every university president. Every single university president that you're right now sending a check to for tuition for your kid or your grandkid, you should send them this and say, do you agree with this or disagree? And why? Show your work. It's 7:53.